So to start at the top, we got Tim Donaghy today. He's a former NBA referee for 13 years between 1994 and 2007. And you served, 15 months in prison?
15 months federal prison.
Yep, and it was for betting on
wire fraud and gambling.
Gambling, okay.
When the feds don't know what they charge you with, they charge you with wire fraud. That's something that's so widespread that anybody really can be charged with wire fraud.
Okay.
Yeah, for passing information over state lines is what it was, using the telephone.
Okay. And then obviously you went to prison, and then you have a book and personal file, and then also the Netflix documentary that's came out this past September it came out?
Yep, came out. The book did well. Originally, the lady that helped me publish it stole the money. I ended up suing her, and was fortunate enough. I had a great attorney with that, Nick Mooney, and I won $1.8 million from her, from everything she did and how she tortured me and called my probation officer, tried to get me thrown back in jail because she didn't want to pay me and made up lies. But I was fortunate enough that the probation lady was pretty smart and she knew what she was doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, worked out good.
So for this book, so you get another publisher after the first one went south?
I did. I got another publisher, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. Probably 8 years now, and I still get residual checks every quarter. So I'm lucky that it still sells. I think every time the NBA playoffs hit and one team's mad and wants to know why, and what the NBA does behind the scenes, the book sells well, and it picks up with sales.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I guess to kind of start things off, you just want to take us from like kind of the beginning. I know you grew up in Philly, but just kind of how you got to be an NBA ref and just kind of your first, 26 years of how you got to be an NBA ref from childhood.
Yeah. My dad was a local college referee that did the Final Four for, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row. And I just started refereeing, grade school and high school games, and I didn't like any jobs I had out of college when I graduated from Villanova. So, my uncle was an NBA referee. A lot of local guys were NBA referees. So, I just came up with the idea of trying to pursue that and sent a letter up to the office, made a couple phone calls, and eventually I was invited out to a camp in Los Angeles, and Daryl Garrettson and Aaron Wade were there, and Aaron Wade was in charge of the CBA, which was the minor leagues of the NBA at the time. And he liked me enough that he gave me a contract to referee in the CBA, which was the minor leagues.
Nice. And you were in the CBA for 3 years?
I was in the CBA for 2 years, and then that third year I refereed the preseason in the NBA. I think it was 4 games, and then did a full-time year in the CBA again, and the following year I was hired.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you're middle of your first year, middle of your second year, you're in, Aberdeen, South Dakota, or whatever town? Do you ever feel like you wanted to just quit on the spot?
Absolutely. I'll never forget. I was going to Omaha on Christmas Eve. I got to the hotel. They gave me an apple and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner because all the restaurants were closed, and it was just depressing at times, not knowing if you were going to make it to the NBA. But sitting in those hotel rooms is, just in those cities that the CBA's around can be pretty depressing.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
So what was it like? Like you got the call to be an NBA ref? Like someone just call you get something in the mail? You're pretty exhilarating?
Yeah, I got a phone call from Rod Thorne, and he was in charge of the referees at the time over Daryl Garrettson. And he told me that, I was going to be hired full time that year. And I remember joking around with him saying, when I'm in the airport now, I no longer need to wait for somebody to put the USA Today down so I can pick it up. I can go buy one. And we just kind of laughed. And, he was a good guy, and he moved on from the NBA and I think started working for a couple different teams in New Jersey Nets at the time. So he was a good guy to work for in the beginning.
And Rod Thorne, he was the guy that passed on Jordan, or no? Or
he drafted Jordan with the Bulls.
He drafted Jordan with the Bulls. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. So you remember your first, NBA game that you reffed?
I do. It was Houston at Indiana. and Daryl Garrison was actually at the game.
Okay.
And it was a close game, and Reggie Miller, I think the Indiana Pacers were down 3 or 4 points, and he had the ball, and he head faked Olajuwon and kind of jumped into him and hit him with an elbow in the throat, and probably was a call that could have went either way. The safe call probably would have been the call on Olajuwon, but I called an offensive foul, and the place went nuts. And Larry Brown was the coach of the Pacers at the time, and the place just started throwing everything that they had on the floor. And I remember I said to Paul Mahalik, who was the crew chief, let's just get the ball and play. There's only like 20 seconds left. And he said, Tim, I would if I could. It's like a hockey rink out here. So, we ended up finishing the game, and they were still throwing stuff on us as we left. And, I was fortunate enough that Rod Thorne reviewed the tape with Daryl Garrison and said that I got the call right, and they supported me 100%, which was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. What's the worst thing you've gotten thrown at you?
I was in Portland one time, and I think I threw out Rasheed Wallace, and a lady in the front row had a full water bottle, and I don't know if she was a softball player or a former baseball player, and she hurled it at me, just missed my head. So,
okay.
From fans, really just water bottles and, Coke cans and stuff like that.
Yeah. Nothing too bad.
Right. Yeah. Nothing too bad.
It's never good, but.
Right. But it's, par for the course that,
right.
The fans are going to be upset. And when you're leaving, they kind of at times, will say stuff and throw stuff at you.
Right. Back in the good old days, we could do that in the arena. If you sat courtside, you could talk trash or throw stuff at the refs.
Yeah, well, maybe not throw stuff at the refs, but a lot of stuff went back and forth. Now, when my last year, they gave you a card that you were supposed to give to the security guy, and he gives it to the fan, and really they're not supposed to be yelling and cursing. They really kind of cut all that stuff out.
Right. Yeah, because I just remember, I feel like nowadays, if you're like courtside or anything, you can't say anything. Yeah, you can't say anything. Like, yeah, I mean, you can still like talk trash, but it wasn't like KG, but just for being a Timberwolves fan, used to be cussing probably.
Yeah, it's amazing that I guess any little cursing or something that's deemed a curse, referee can issue them a warning, and if they keep it up, basically get rid of them.
No, I'm saying more of like the fans, if they're chirping, or the referees still talk to the fans. They say,
if the fans are cursing, they can issue them this card through the security and really get rid of them. And, it's amazing that they pay, $2,000-$3,000 to sit in those seats. And I've seen people get thrown out in the first and second quarter, and, it's almost like, was it worth it?
Right. Was it worth it to say that? Yeah. And then you also did the Malice in the Palace game. You just want to give a backstory on that?
Yeah, Malice at the Palace was definitely a game that you wish you weren't a part of, especially as a referee, because, fights aren't good, in a game that you're officiating, because, they tend to say you lost control of it.
Right.
So I just think with the end of that game, there was really nothing that we could basically do to prevent that. It was just, too many nuts on, two separate teams between Artest and Wallace and, all those guys at Steven Jackson. Yeah. I mean, there was just a recipe for disaster, those two teams. And when that guy threw the cup at Ron Artest, I remember I was right there, and I grabbed him by the shirt to try to prevent him from going up into the stands. And he drugged me probably about a good 15 feet, like I wasn't even on his back.
Yeah.
And, finally I just let go, and he was off to the races. And yeah, it was a disaster. That chairs were being thrown, and I remember telling the story before. And who was the big center? Jermaine O'Neal. This Mexican kid came out of the stands with his fist up, like he wanted to fight him.
This kind of yeah.
And Jermaine O'Neal wound up to punch him, and he hit him square in the jaw. And I was thinking, this guy should be dead, but Jermaine's back foot slipped on the.
Oh, really?
Because it was wet on the court, and he really didn't hit him, hard, with a solid punch. And if not, I think the kid would be dead.
Right. Because he like ran like a quarter of a half a court. Like he ran like 20 feet and wound up.
And he sued. Right. I think he ended up getting some money. A lot of those people sued and ended up getting money, even though, they pretty much had no business doing what they did.
No, yeah, for sure.
I remember there's a lot of bad blood between the Pacers, Pistons from the playoffs before.
Yeah, the year before they had some issues. And, again, when you have some of those guys that, are on those two different teams, that just their whole personality changes once they step onto the court. Off the court, they're pretty nice guys. And when they get on the court, I think their competitive nature just goes to a whole nother level. And it, it's just something that, sometimes can't be controlled. And, you have Larry Brown, who's stirring the pot himself a lot of times. It's just something that was a bad situation for everybody.
For sure. Who was the coach of the Pistons? Was Larry Brown the coach of the Pistons, and then the Pacers with Rick Carlisle? Or
no, Larry Brown was Detroit, and because I remember, when everybody was out on the floor, he yelled at me. He said, "Do something," and I said, "Me, you can control these guys. I can't control the guys." And he went over and got the microphone and tried to get everybody to calm down. I think it was Carlisle at the time that was coach of the Pacers.
Yeah. I know around our test, that was like because then they put in like after the Malice at the Palace, they put in like the dress code. That was kind of one of the black eyes at the NBA.
And believe it or not, Ron Artest is one of the nicest guys off the floor. You could, I remember his early days, he was, really nuts, but off the court, he's a nice guy. And same with Rasheed Wallace. I actually did his podcast.
You did?
A year or two ago. And I think after, we kind of hashed it out a little bit, he understood, a little bit better, and he was kind of actually pretty nice.
No, yeah, because makes sense.
Didn't Rasheed Wallace like one time threaten to like he wanted to like you called a couple technicals on him. He wanted to like punch you outside the garage.
Or meet you in the parking garage, or meet you in the parking lot.
Yeah. He did meet me out there. He hid behind a pole, and when I walked out, he jumped out and he started saying something to me and cursing at me. And big mistake by me was I cursed back at him, and really wasn't a smart move based on the fact that he's 7 foot and I'm 5'10" if I'm lucky. So he tried to get at me, and thank God, at the last minute, a lot of security guys and Brevin Knight tackled him, or I'd probably be eaten through a straw. Even today, I think he would have killed me. So
And Brandon Knight, this is when he was on the Pistons.
Brevin Knight, he was on
the guy from Kentucky. The guard?
The guard.
Yeah, the guard. Okay.
I don't know if he was playing for Portland at the time or Memphis, maybe. I think he was playing for Memphis. So
that makes sense.
They were just kind of talking outside, and, he was kind of waiting for me to walk out, and scared me and caught me off guard. And, the Philly in me came out, and I cursed back at him, which wasn't a smart move.
Right. So those Philly people don't back down. Yeah.
Yeah, not when they should, once in a while.
Good fans, though.
Yeah.
So what? Who else were like players that? Who was the most like troubling player to have to ref against? Or was always giving you crap and stuff like that.
Probably Rasheed Wallace. It just like I said, his competitive nature on the floor went to a whole new level, and he was just felt like everybody was out to get him, and he just somebody that you couldn't reason with, and you just couldn't talk to him, and you were hoping that he didn't want to talk to you that night. That's how difficult he was to deal with.
Yep.
And then who do you think's the best trash talker? Because we're from Minnesota, so we always thought KG was a good trash talker.
Yeah, KG, Gary Payton was good. He seemed to be able to get in a lot of people's heads. But Garnett for sure, because it just seemed like Garnett took it to a whole new level in the court. Nobody had his intensity. Nobody had his effort on the defensive end. He just really seemed to put everything into it each and every game he played.
Yeah, when everyone would shoot, he'd always, if they shot after the whistle,
he'd block it. Yeah.
And Garnett had that thing with Charlie Villanueva, right? Where I don't know what he called him, whatever. Yeah, he was bald, if you remember that.
Right.
And then he had the Carmelo Anthony wife or girlfriend story or whatever. So.
Right. Cocoa Puffs. She tastes like Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah. Lucky Charms, or I forget what it's called, but.
I think it actually was Honey Nut Cheerios, what he said.
Oh yeah,
yeah, or
Honey Crisp or something.
Not too funny.
So you reffed against like Michael Jordan? How was that experience?
Awesome. One of my first games the year I didn't get hired was in Chicago when he played, and it was a whole new level of excitement. I think in games where he was there, even if it was an away game for Chicago, they were like at the time like a rock star band coming in with Rodman, Pippen, and Jordan, and everyone just seemed to, want to be there, want to be around them. And, they were the team at the time that was difficult to beat. And it just had a whole nother level of excitement for the NBA and the league. And I think that's, where they really started to go to a whole nother level.
For sure, for sure. And do you think like Michael Jordan was getting like superstar calls at the time from from all the other refs or the league in general?
Yeah, definitely. I never forget when I was reffing a game with Jess Kersey at the time, and he's since passed away, but he was a great guy, and he would just say, "Hey Tim, when Jordan goes to the hole and there's a little bit of confusion or contact, and I'm not sure, I wait, and if he misses a shot, I just blow the whistle because he doesn't miss too often." So there's no doubt that Jordan was the guy that for the officials in the league was the originator of the star treatment, and it carried on for many years with many different people.
Right. Who else do you think in like Jordan's era, and then kind of like transition to like the 2000s? Who else kind of got the apex of the star treatment?
I think Shaquille O'Neal. He was difficult, and when he was in the post, he would always bang, and he would love the contact, and he was a star player, so you didn't want to start calling offensive fouls on him in the post because as it was explained to the referees, guys like LeBron James and Kobe and Shaq, people didn't pay $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 to sit courtside to see them on the bench. So there's a situation where it can go either way. Don't give it to them, and if you have to blow the whistle, give it to somebody that's standing near them and dish the foul off on them rather than give it to that star player.
For sure, for sure. And then in terms of like teams, like did you ever see any like teams where I know there's like some of the playoff series and stuff like that. I know the 2002 Lakers Kings Western Conference Finals, like the game 6 everyone talks about. So a popular question people I'll probably always ask you is they think you ref that game. So did you ref that game?
No, it was Bob Delaney. I guess they got Delaney and Donaghy messed up, but it was Bavetta, Delaney, and Bernhardt. And I'm sorry, it was Delaney, Bavetta, and Bernhardt. And Dick Bavetta constantly said that he was put on game 6s to make sure they went to game 7s. He claimed he was the NBA's go-to guy, and he discussed that a lot with a lot of the referees. So he was on a lot of those famous games where, the Lakers could have been knocked out and they weren't in game 7s, and they ended up winning game 7s. It's that famous one with the Kings and the Lakers, and then there was another famous one with the Portland Trailblazers and the Lakers where
the 2000 Western Conference Finals. Right?
Yeah, where the Lakers shot like 25 free throws in the fourth quarter, and the Trailblazers had a great team that year, and probably could have went on to win the championship, just like the Kings should have went on to win the championship that year, but ended up losing that game 7 in Sacramento. But basically they won that game 6 if it wasn't for the way the whistles went against them in that fourth quarter.
Right, for sure.
So you think with if that other ref, you said he kind of they always put him on game 6. So you think after game 6 happens and the NBA kind of gets what they want, they get a game 7. Do you think at that point it's kind of fair game? Absolutely.
Yeah. Because the last thing you want to do as a referee or as the NBA as a whole is, decide a game 7 and have a team feel like they totally got screwed. I mean, I think in that series with the Kings and the Lakers, they would have hoped that the Kings won that game 7 because they're, even to this day, they're not living down that game 6. What a disaster that was. And, they just thought the Kings were going to win on their home floor, and it wasn't even a close game. So I think when you get to a game 7, you just want to make sure, that it's called as fairly as possible. And, unfortunately for the league, the Lakers ended up winning.
Right.
They probably are glad they won because I think the Lakers in Los Angeles bring global attention, not like what the Kings would bring, but that was just a difficult situation that year. And I remember, a couple of years before that, somebody said to David Stern in an interview, who would you like to see, in the NBA Finals? And he said, my great matchup or a matchup I would love to see is the Lakers versus the Lakers. So, that just goes to show you right there that his marketing mind is moving, and he knows that's what's going to bring the most attention to the league. And, the referees all knew that. And, at times that's how they went out and officiated the games.
So do you think it was more of it's 3-2, let's even it up to 3-3, let's get that game 7 and then see where it goes from there? Or do you think it's more of let's try maybe to push LA to the finals?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think when you're refereeing a game 6, you don't want to be the one that makes a call that sends that team home for the summer. So you're going to give them the benefit of every call and let the game 7 decide it. Let it, push to the next game, and hopefully the best team wins. So you're basically going to give that team that's down in the series anything that can go either way.
For sure. And do you still think, I guess I get kind of a 2-part question. The first part is, do you still think the 3-2, try to even it up 3-3, game 6 still happens in the current NBA? And then my second question would be kind of like momentum reffing, where I don't know, you always say like Dick Pavetta always like to keep the game.
You should ask 2 questions. Ask 1 question.
Okay. I guess my one question would be,
come on, Seth.
Yeah. You're asking 2 questions at a time.
Yeah.
And they're all long questions. Ask 1 question.
Yeah. I guess from just watching the Timberwolves Grizzlies series, it seems
who would win in a fight between you 2?
It would be close. It would be close.
I don't know. We've had some good battles over the years.
Yeah. It would, I guess, like just watching the Timberwolves Grizzlies series last year, like the third quarter, we were up by 25, and it just seems like for 5 straight possessions, the refs are blowing the whistle against us, and they're getting the whistle. I feel like,
do refs? No, that's a great question. Yeah. When a team is up 25 points, the referees change their way of officiating, and a team that's down is going to get the benefit of all the calls, because you don't want that to go from 25 to 40. You want to get it as close as possible to, not have the viewership turn away, to make it an exciting game. Blowouts aren't good for the league. So as an official, you want to make sure the team that's down, gets the benefit of calls. And the last thing you want to do is give something that can go either way to the team that's up, or, totally miss a call against a team that's down and have them embarrassed even more than they're being embarrassed. So you give them the benefit of everything. And that's why you'll see games go from 25 point spread, down to 15, down to 10, down to 5. It happens all the time because it's how the game's officiated.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's something I just noticed so much in the NBA, even currently.
It's like playing 2K these days. You're down. Yeah. Not all the time, but so you think if a team is up 2-0 in a series, that game 3 is going to be, let's say whatever, one team completely is overmatched, but that game 3 will be the hardest game for the favorite team to win, right? They're going to try to make it 2-1.
I write about this in the book. I know Sevi read it. I don't know if you read it, but
yeah, I did not read it.
Houston was playing Dallas in a series when I was an official in the series, and Dallas was ahead 2 games to none, and they're going to Houston's home floor. And Houston was up 2 games to none against Dallas, and Mark Cuban was complaining about the officiating. And, we were told to make sure we called certain things in that game. It was in Houston, and we were told to watch out for illegal screens with Yao Ming, traveling by Yao Ming, and, put Dallas at an advantage because, we were looking for all these things that they were saying were missed in the previous 2 games. And even Donnie Vaden, who was the group supervisor for the officials at the time, went and warned Van Gundy that this was going to happen. So Dallas ends up winning the next 2 games in Houston. The series is tied, and Jeff Van Gundy blows a gasket and goes into the press and says, I had somebody from the league office tell me that this was going to happen to me. I basically got screwed. He wouldn't say who told him, but it was Donnie Vaden, and he ended up getting fined $100,000 because he wouldn't say who told him. But we all knew that Donnie Vaden was friends with Van Gundy, and that's who told him. But that's definitely the things that they do, to try to get these series to go 6, hopefully 7 games, because the amount of revenue is just astronomical when you're talking about concessions, parking, tickets. TV, the whole 9 yards. It's, millions and millions of dollars for each series that, they can get to go 6 and 7 games.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
So like the classic case would be like if a team is down 3-2, whatever team is down, they might send 10 clips. You might get 10 clips from the league office from like your referee.
Yeah, they put us in a room, similar to this, and they, will start showing tape and plays from the previous games and show you plays that were missed. And there are always going to be calls that you need to make that's going to favor that team that's down in the series. And that's how they program and train the referees to go out there and put a team at an advantage or a disadvantage. And, as a referee, you're watching these plays on a big screen TV, and you're going to go out and you're going to make those calls, and you're going to do it because you're getting graded based on what they're telling you to call. And you want to be an official that moves up into the next round of the playoffs and, makes the extra $25,000, $30,000 per round. So you're going to want the best grade possible. So you're going to do exactly what they tell you to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And then how would that start? Like, let's say a legal screen with Yao Ming. So like early in the game, like one of the first couple possessions, legal screen, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can call an illegal screen or traveling, every time down the floor in the NBA.
Right.
So, it's not like you're going to be wrong if all of a sudden you start calling it. So
Right.
you're just going to go out and you're going to do what they tell you to do. And, I remember there was travels called on Yao Ming, illegal screens. And, all of a sudden, he's on the bench and, there's a problem. And Dallas, like I said, wins the next 2 games and ends up winning that series in 7. So, that's why Van Gundy was so furious because, how many series are you up 2 games to none, right? Going to your home floor and you end up winning or end up losing in 7 games. Not
Right.
too often.
Yeah, not too often. And I think Trace McGrady's never broke that out of the first round, right? When he was with Houston.
Was that the only year Trace McGrady and Yao really played together?
But I don't think he ever got out of the first round in Houston.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I know Yao never really advanced too far in the playoffs. Because after that year, I think he ended up having foot problems.
Right. Then there was they're all injured, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And then they had that Aaron Brooks year, right?
Or
is that,
Rafer
that's way
also.
long. Yeah. Or,
We might be in different eras.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so who do you think who's like the game 6 guy? I know you said Bavetta, but who do you think the game 6 guy for the NBA is today?
It's tough. I don't know that really anyone's going to go out there and do what Bavetta did. But
Yep.
It seems like Foster and Mark Davis are on a lot of games, important games. Davis primarily for game 6s, I think. And, Foster seems to be on a lot of game 7s. So, but, knowing those guys in the past, they, of course, would never talk about like Bavetta talked about it. I mean, we'd be sitting at lunch and he'd flat out tell you, hey, I'm the NBA's go-to guy.
Right.
I'm on this game 6 for a reason. So, don't fuck up what I'm here to do.
Right.
Or, there were times where he would talk about, games and you'd be at lunch and he'd say, you know what, I really screwed over Lamar Odom a couple weeks ago. A couple bad calls on him. They weren't right. I got to take care of them tonight. So you knew Lamar Odom was going to probably go to the line 10, 12 times.
Right.
Score 25 points and be happy that night. And, Miami Heat were going to be at an advantage in that scenario. So, just different things that, were said to me that I shouldn't have repeated and taken advantage of. The referees in the league shouldn't have been doing it, but, I certainly shouldn't have been taking advantage of it and telling at the time people to bet the games.
No, for sure. Because I know last year with the Celtics Bucks game 6, I think Foster was supposed to be on the game. And then, I don't know, Bill Simmons and all Twitter were like, we got the extender. We're going to win tonight. Bet Boston. And then they took him off the game a couple hours before and they said non-COVID illness. They put someone else on. So maybe that's an example of the NBA knowing that fans are catching on, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that happened.
Because they put him on game 4 of Celtics Nets in first round last year because they probably wanted a game 5 with Kyrie.
Maybe not even catching on. Maybe they just don't want the backlash if it doesn't go right.
Right, but I think he was on like game 6 of the Warriors Cavs when LeBron came back 3-1. And I think it was also like that Suns Spurs series.
Yeah, I know a lot of times, they're tracking how many teams win with certain referees. I know Eric Lewis just his crew missed a pivotal call that went against LeBron James at the end of the game last week, and they said that he's like 20-2 when he referees the Celtics game. So,
Oh, really? Yeah.
I guess gamblers are really looking for that now, and it's a situation where there's favorites, or he may know somebody off the floor that's on that team, and they're getting the benefit of some calls, and it happened a lot when I was there. Mathis would have certain players come to his charity golf tournament, and you knew out on the floor that he was going to take care of those players in a different way. And same with guys like Derek Stafford. He hated Pat Riley of the Miami Heat, and he loved Isaiah Thomas, and had some people's phone numbers in his phone, and spent time with them off the floor. And you knew that spilled out onto the floor, and especially somebody like Joe Crawford, who hated Mark Cuban. He would literally stand at the foul line during timeouts, stick his hands down his pants, grab his nuts, shake them while looking at Mark Cuban, and laugh.
Really?
And Mark Cuban, complained so much about it that, he had a camera during timeouts totally focus on Crawford, and, he finally stopped doing it. But, it's funny. We would be in the locker room in Dallas, and everybody would be afraid to talk because, they thought Cuban bugged the locker room.
So well, that's funny. That's interesting.
Yeah. No. So as a ref, you guys didn't like Mark Cuban that much.
No, it's funny. I liked him a lot. I thought he was a great guy, even to this day. I just emailed with him last week. I think he's a great guy. I think he got the short end of the stick from the referees because, and he was right in the fact that, the referees early on, didn't put the work ethic in that you should for making the amount of money that we made. And he was someone that wanted the referees to have computers, to be responsible to watch more tape. And, a lot of the older guys were furious and hated the fact that, after the game, you had to watch the game and review the tape. And, but it was only something that was going to make you better. So, when he came in, he really complained to the point where he wanted, this done. And all the older guys hated him because at the time, Eddie T. Rush was a supervisor of officials, and he would tell everybody this is because of Mark Cuban. And he hated Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban hated him. So, there were some things there, and a lot of guys, to ingratiate themselves with the supervisor, who was Ed Rush, they stuck at the Cuban. And, it's unfortunate that they did it, but they did. And, I think there was a Miami Heat series where in the finals with Dallas where, Bennett Salvatore stuck it to, the Dallas Mavericks because of Cuban. And, there was a couple other guys that would do it too. So, personally, I liked Mark Cuban. I think that everything he wanted to implement was stuff that was going to make the referees better.
For sure.
Yeah, that series where they were up 2-0 on the Heat. Yeah, and then they lost in 6, right? Yeah.
And then the other owner, because you mentioned, I think, 2 owners that I guess created more work for the refs, or how the reffing community looked at the owners. The one was Mark Cuban, the other was Robert Sarver. Obviously, everyone knows about Robert Sarver now, but I feel like I didn't really know anything about Robert Sarver 2010. What made kind of Robert Sarver?
He there's a difference between him and Cuban. Cuban, he was adamant. He yelled at the referees, but he didn't come at you in an evil, vindictive way. The guy Starver was just a total asshole from the beginning to end. I don't really think he knew anything about basketball. I think Cuban knew a little bit about basketball and was learning. But this guy Starver was just a complete jerk off from beginning to end, sat right there courtside and just would berate you from the opening tap till the end of the game.
Yeah. Actually, I know the Timberwolves owner sits courtside every game too. If you remember that. Maybe you don't.
Yeah, it's funny because the guy in Boston, I forget his name, how to say his name. He's got a funny last name, but he was giving me shit one time, and he was sat right underneath the basket, and finally I had enough, and I turned and said something to him, and he said something to me, and I said, fuck it, I'm throwing this guy out, and I go over to the scores table, and I said, you see that guy over there underneath the basket? I said, get security and get him the fuck out of here. And the guy goes, Tim, wait a minute, come here. And I go, what? And he goes, did you know that's the owner? I said, it is? He goes, yeah. I said, all right, forget it. Because it was going to cause me more trouble throwing him out,
Right.
you know, with paperwork. And, you know, that's the last thing you want to do is be throwing owners because they have a lot of power. So
Right.
I just said, I'll forget it. And I just ignored him. And I ended up seeing one of the scouts the next day in the airport. And he said that everybody there was laughing so hard about, you know, what you said to him, and you were going back and forth with him. I said, yeah, I didn't know he was the owner. I said, I didn't think you knew.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's funny. So, okay. So obviously your refereeing career is going really well, 94 to 2003. But during this time, you kind of like joined a country club. I guess, how did you kind of get into starting to like sports bet with once your friends? And gambling at the golf course was my downfall. You know, you start making big money and, you know, I think you let it go to your head a little bit, joined a country club, bought the big house on the country club, nice cars. And, you know, every day you're over there. And if it's not gambling on the golf course, playing cards in the locker room, or jumping in a limo and heading down to Atlantic City, you could be there in an hour and 15 minutes. So, it's just something that, I was doing it every day. I loved it. I could sit at that blackjack table for 10, 12 hours and feel like it was 10 minutes. And, you know, there with a great bunch of friends, and, you know, they're betting maybe, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 a hand. I'm probably betting a couple hundred. And when, you know, a good shoe of cards, you know, screaming at the top of our lungs and having, you know, the time of our lives. So it's just something that I got hooked on. And, you know, they were always sports gamblers when it came to college and, you know, professional sports. And one day, one of my buddies just had the Philadelphia Daily News. I just came from home, and I was, you know, looking at where all my buddies were refereeing games that night. And he said, you know, pick me 3 games. And I quickly rattled off 3 games to him. And the next day he called me and said, man, they all won. You know, is it that easy? And I said, yeah, you know, based on relationships, positive and negative, between referees and players, referees and coaches, and referees and owners, and it spills out onto the floor. And, you know, we just started betting on football and basketball and baseball, and then, you know, the NBA, and then eventually NBA games that I officiated, because I just knew what teams were put at advantage and disadvantage. And, you know, unfortunately, it was a situation where we did very well, and, you know, times we wanted to stop because I was a little nervous, and we would, and then somebody would lose money at the casinos. So, you know,
gotta make it back.
Go back to the ace in the hole. You know, he would drop 20 grand at the casinos and, you know, beg me to help him get it back, and I would. And, you know, then finally in December, you know, in November one year we stopped, and that's when, you know, Batista got involved in December, when he told Martino that, you know, he needed to talk to me, that I was in trouble over something. And, you know, Tommy didn't even really know. And, you know, he thought we were all going out to dinner one night. And Batista told Tommy, don't tell him I'm coming, because, you know, I wouldn't want to be around him because he's a bookmaker. And, you know, I knew he was an asshole even, you know, before I started dealing with him. So when he showed up, it was a big shock. And, you know, basically told me he knew what I had been doing for the last several years. And he didn't want me to, you know, expose him to the NBA, or worse yet, have somebody visit my wife and kids in Florida. So,
oh, really?
You know, I basically knew he was involved with, you know, organized crime in a way, but not to the extent that we found out he was, and, you know, really what he was doing. So, you know, I started to give him the picks.
Nice.
I just thought at the end of the, you know, the year, it would be something that would be over with, and I would never do it again. And, you know, at the end of the year, I got a call from Martino when I was, you know, getting ready to play golf, and he said the FBI had been at his house 2 or 3 times. So I basically knew, you know, we were all fucked.
Yeah, yeah. And you feel like your life is.
You said you're breaking out a new set of irons. What irons were you breaking out when?
It's a brand new set of pings. I'll never forget it. I pulled the wedge out and I hit it once, and he called. I didn't answer. I took another shot. He called again. I'm like, what does he want? So, you know, I answered, and he told me. I put the wedge back in the bag. I drove home, and I don't think I ate for 3 weeks. I lost 25 pounds in 3 weeks.
Really?
And I finally, you know, went to an attorney, and who was a neighbor of mine, and, you know, told him what happened, told him what I did. And he just said, don't tell anyone. And he said, get the name of the prosecutor. So I called Martino back. He called the prosecutor, and I was in the room when he called. He had the guy on speakerphone. His name was Tom Siegel. So
Okay.
I'm sitting there, and he goes, listen, don't say a word. You're not here. And he just said, what's going on? I hear you're, talking about, Tim Donaghy, who I'm representing, and, I want to know what's going on. And he just said, listen, you tell Tim Donaghy. And I'm sitting right there. We know what he did. We know who he did it with. He's better off coming to us, because if we have to come get him, not only is he going to lose his job, but I'm going to put him in jail for a long, long time. And I just fucking shit. So,
Do you think he knew that you were there?
no.
No.
Mm-mm. So we actually went and got a federal attorney, and his name was John Lauro, who was up in Tampa. We met him that night for dinner. I didn't need a thing. Those two ate. I told him everything. He again said, keep your mouth shut. And 2 days later, we were on a plane up to New York to, basically tell them what I did and who I did it with and how I did it. And, that first day was, was a disaster when they put me in a room, by myself as they went and met. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting in this room, and there's hundreds of boxes in the room, and they're all marked John Gotti trial. And I'm looking around, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I turn, and there's this big whiteboard to the right. It says gambling, 5 to 10 years, money laundering, 10 to 15 years, racketeering, 10 to 15 years. And I'm like, I'm fucking going to jail for fucking the rest of my life.
Right.
And they came in, and, I wish I would have been more prepared for going in that room. And John Laura didn't do much wrong, but one thing that he probably should have said was, this is a little bit of a setup. They're trying to scare you. And, they did. They scared the shit out of me. And Phil Scala, who was a supervisory special agent for the Gambino crime family squad, he came in, and I'm sitting down, and he got up and he pointed his finger across the table like this far from my face. And he says, you see that seat you're sitting in? And I was like, yeah. He goes, that's the same fucking seat John Gotti sat in. I fucking got John Gotti. And I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
So he says, you think you're going to lie to me? Get the fuck up and leave right now. And I was like,
did you come clean? Yeah.
So, I didn't lie. I wasn't going to lie anyway. But with that, I definitely wasn't going to lie. So, I just told him everything. And, I don't think he believed much of what I told him. He was looking at me like I had 10 heads.
Right.
And, even explaining to him the whole airline ticket scandal with the refs, how it was set up that we got 10 grand a month, and we sent in fake receipts to get that 10 grand. And then we flew, around the country on frequent flyers, and, didn't pay the tax.
Ken Maurer got right.
Yeah. So he's like, there's no way that happened. I'm like, all right. So 2 weeks go by, and they had flown FBI agents all over the country investigating everything that I told them. And they brought me back in, and John Lauro even said, Tim, they believe everything you said. And I was like, okay, well, I'm still fucked. That doesn't do me any good.
Right.
And then they wanted me to basically be a cooperating witness against.
Wait. In that room, I guess to hold up for a second, you signed something that you subconsciously, right? Didn't you sign?
That was at the end.
That was at the end of not in June of 2007.
No, that was a big deal, and I'll explain that to you.
Yeah.
But they basically wanted me to wear a wire and get information like on Bavetta and, some of the other guys that they had investigated and thought were doing some illegal stuff. And
the FBI.
The big mistake is they told David Stern there was an issue, and he was so smart that he leaked it to the press so that, I couldn't do any of this. So all the other referees knew, oh, fuck, don't talk to him. You never talk to somebody who's, dealing with the FBI.
Right.
Especially if you had done some shady stuff in the past. So that really shut down the whole investigation, and they wanted to charge him with obstruction of justice for doing that.
David Stern.
Yeah. And, to make a long story short, the guy who was in charge of the prosecutors at the time, his name was Greg Andres. He was the head prosecutor. He ended up leaving 2 months after, my case was over, and he went to a law firm that did all the outside legal counsel work for the NBA. So they said he went from making $200,000 a year to like $1 million.
Right.
So that was his bonus for, doing what he did to me and, protecting the NBA.
Yeah, protecting the shield
Yeah.
So this isn't Phil Scala. This is who you said?
This was this guy by the name of Greg Andres, who was the head United States attorney at the time. And Phil Scala was offered a job from Stern too, to, in the security department. And Phil immediately knew what he was trying to do in regard to shutting down the investigation, because he knew what I had told him was the truth. And what you were referring to is, I guess, they didn't want it to come out down the road that I fixed games. And, I was never going to say I fixed games, because I never really did. What I did was I called what the league wanted me to call. So they said subconsciously.
Can you explain the difference between, I guess, betting and fixing games? I guess for people that are curious, I guess the difference.
I think, fixing games, I would have went out there and purposely put Jordan and Kobe and Shaq, LeBron James, stars to the bench with these fouls that really you could have given to anybody. I didn't do that. And, what I did is I knew who was at an advantage or disadvantage based on what the officials were going to call that night, based on the team meetings in the morning. And the lines were probably all 4, 5, and 6 points. They wanted to know, did I go out and, call fouls on some of these stars so that these teams would lose? And I didn't. And, but they made me say, because I had, bet on these games and given this information to people associated with organized crime, subconsciously, I could have done it. And at that time, you know what? I would have signed anything, they wanted me to sign.
Right.
And, it was funny that, there were so many meetings about me fixing games, and, I just was never going to sit there and say I fixed a game.
Right. No, I hear you. So you're saying, like, it's one thing if, like, the Timberwolves are the 8 seed and they're playing whatever, the Warriors a couple years ago. It's one thing to make sure that the Timberwolves win that game because you
win
have
the series,
or win the series because you put 250 down on it or something.
Yeah, I think it was more, during the regular season, when, star players were playing, they just wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing stuff, with these star players, sending them to the bench or making sure, a Kobe Bryant got 3 or 4 quick fouls. So, at the time he was the main scorer for the Lakers. And, if he was on the bench, the other team probably had a better chance of winning and covering. They just want to make sure, stuff like that wasn't going on.
For sure.
And then, so do you still, have you ever talked to Batista since?
1 or 2 times. Batista's such a fucking rat. He'll say that me and Tommy were rats, but he's such an idiot. I mean, he was caught over a Gambino wiretap talking about it. And we had restitution of like $225,000, and they had liens on their houses, and I didn't. I sold my house before the government put a lien on it. And, they wanted me to pay off the restitution, let the government take my retirement. And, he promised me that once they sold his house, he was going to pay me his portion of it. I got it in writing. And, of course, after he sells his house, he takes off and doesn't pay me. So he's just such a scumbag to this day. He's just, continues to lie. I mean, he's a lifelong criminal. Even when he was 18 or 19 years old, he was stealing stereos out of the back of Best Buy. So, he's just somebody that, has been a total jackass his whole life.
No, for sure. Just Tommy still talk to him?
I don't know. I think from time to time, Tommy does talk to him. I talk to Tommy every now and then. He thinks the same with Batista.
Yeah.
Batista, when they were in jail in Brooklyn, he told everybody that Tommy was a rat, and, people were going to kill Tommy. He was in like MCC Brooklyn. He wasn't in a good jail. So people were giving Tommy a hard time. So they basically put Tommy in solitary confinement for his own protection for like 2 months.
Wow.
And fed him through a slot in the door. So, he did a lot of shit to a lot of people that,
right,
is really unexcusable.
Was there any like scary nights in prison, or was it like not like a
What
maximum
was, I
security?
guess a good question is, what was your scariest time on, I guess, on Earth? Would it be like the Malice in the Palace? Would it be when Rasheed Wallace wanted to hit you first night in prison? Or would it be, you know, when the kind of the sky was falling in early June 2007?
You know, when I originally got the call from Tommy, that wasn't one of my, you know, brightest days, you know, that the FBI had been to his door a couple times. You know, walking into jail that first day and, you know, across the bottom of the ticker of every news station in the country, you know, said that I was reporting to jail and I was a cooperating witness for the government. So I was quickly labeled a rat. You know, that wasn't, you know, the best. And when the lady violated me from the halfway house,
Because you went to the health club.
what happened was, I was my first day at the halfway house. I'm sitting with a guy that I was, in prison with, and this lady walks by with 5 bags of McDonald's. She was about 300 pounds. And he makes a comment and says, man, he's leaving the next day. He goes, you think she needs all that? And I'm like, I look at her and I just kind of laugh. Like it was like a nervous laugh. She turns around. She goes, you think that's funny? And I was like, no. She goes, we'll see if that's funny. You know, 3 weeks later, she violated me for going to the health club, which was right up the street, which I had an issue with my knee, and I was allowed to go there. The other guy gave me permission to go there. And they came and shackled me and handcuffed me and took me to the county jail and put me in solitary confinement for 15 days and fed me through a slot in the door. So
that wasn't a fun 15 days.
That wasn't a fun 15 days because I didn't know how long I was going to be in solitary confinement for.
Right.
And then when they finally took me out of there, they threw me in state prison, and I was laying in the bed the first night and nobody knew who I was, which was great. I didn't want anyone to know who I was. And some guy comes up with the great idea of everybody saying, there was like 12 people in the cell, why you were there. So this one guy saying, oh, you know, this guy was sleeping with my girlfriend. I beat him with a baseball bat. And the other guy says, you know, oh, I was selling drugs with an AR-15 and like really bad crimes.
Right.
So they you know, coming towards me, and I'm just laying there acting like I'm sleeping, like, oh shit, I don't even know what I'm going to say.
Right.
And, you know, I just acted like I was sleeping, and it passed by me. And like, you know, a week later, somebody had leaked my book, and it was all over ESPN, and everybody was kind of like staring at me. And then they took me out of there and threw me back in like protective custody to where nobody could get to me. So, yeah.
Were you nervous a couple of times that like someone would get a shank or like one of those things?
Definitely. The last jail I was in, I remember, you know, saying to my dad on the phone, you know, I think I could die in here. Yeah, there's no doubt that, you know, that stuff, you know, and they would have like Friday night fights in jail where, I mean, this is funny, but it's not. They would match people up and they would put like flip-flops. They'd bend them over your hand. That was the boxing glove, and they put a big tube sock over the sandal, so you would have to, you know, box.
Right.
So thank God I never had to box, but you know, it was crazy some of the stuff that happened, and the guards and you know, everybody knew what was going on, and they were laughing and, you know, betting too probably with, you know, the other guards. So yeah, a lot of crazy stuff.
And that's how you think something could have happened. Someone puts a shank in the sandal, or you never know.
I don't think it's shanked in the sandal, but I think, you know, if people are going to, you know, fight and somebody's a little, you know, doesn't know if they're going to win in a fair fight, they're definitely going to take a shank and get them when they're not looking.
Right.
Or if somebody thought, you know, I was a cooperating witness for the government, and, you know, a cooperating witness is the reason they're in jail, and, you know, they're doing 20 years. Why not, you know, do something to me and look like a hero?
And is that sometimes how it works? Like someone could be talking to someone on the phone, maybe the animals or the mob back in Atlantic City, or where was it, Atlantic City or Philly? They call him or they get a hold of him.
Yeah, I mean, if for Batista, he was just, you know, thank God I wasn't in the same jail where he was, because what he did to Tommy was a disgrace. And, you know, Tommy, you know, was in a good spot at the time, and they moved him to solitary confinement, and then they moved him to a totally different jail because he was telling everyone that he was a rat, and, you know, he wanted people to do stuff to him.
So to go back to I guess this I'll call it the summer of 2007, right? Like early June, you get contacted. You kind of hire your lawyer, get contacted by the FBI. I think what was it FBI told Stern on June 22nd of 2007. Then the new TV deal, June 27th, 2007. Then the story leaks July 22nd,
Right.
2007, and then within I think it was August 14th, 2007, you I think did your plea or your deal, whatever, with the FBI. I guess just looking at it kind of zoomed out, if you think about all the stakeholders and all this, of like you have the NBA, you have the owners, you have the players, you have the fans, you have the refs themselves, you have the sponsors, the TV networks, even yourself. I guess Batista and Martino, maybe they haven't pleaded out yet, but I feel like who came out good, everyone kind of came out for what maybe charges you're facing or what damage the NBA could have had, and all the sponsors and even from the player side. You guys all kind of came out, I guess, relatively good, maybe besides the potential lawyers in the case. So I guess, do you think that the NBA wanted, I guess, your story to go away? Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt they wanted it to go away and as quickly as possible. I think this guy, Greg Andres and David Stern, were running the whole investigation. And I think even the federal judge was pretty much taking orders from them. So, everybody, in a way kind of escaped it. I mean, if you talk about, 15 months in a federal prison, is that escaping it for me? I don't know, because I'm sure it could have been worse, but, I think the NBA should have accepted responsibility for their, way of training and programming the referees, especially during the playoffs and this whole thing. And they just kind of acted like, it was one bad apple. And David Stern stood up at the podium for his press conference and said, legal gambling as an NBA referee will cost you your job. So anyone that bet as an NBA referee, you're fired. Illegal gambling, betting on NBA games or whatever, will cost you your job and your freedom. And then he finds out through an investigation that 56 out of 60 referees gambled and,
Gambled on NBA games? Or
no, just gambled in general, betting on NFL games, betting on the golf course. But remember, he said, there's a contract. You're not supposed to place a bet of any kind.
Right.
Legal gambling will cost you your job. Illegal gambling will cost you your freedom. Well, he couldn't fire 56 referees, so that kind of went out the window. And then, right a year or two after that, that's when, gambling was pretty much legalized, and, all this revenue for all these sports leagues is going to start flowing in, and they're going to start signing deals with them. So
right.
I think, it just kind of kickstarted the fact that, there's a lot of revenue for the sports leagues and the individual states with legalizing gambling. And that's why it all kind of started to, become legal.
For sure. Do you ever think if you right away with your defense team would have pushed to go on trial or pushed for a trial, do you think that could have changed? Do you think you would have got no jail time? Kind of like what Batista kind of pushed for in the
great question. Not too long ago, I said this to John Lauro last time I was with him. I said, John, you think if I would have kept my mouth shut, what would have happened? And even if I had to go to trial, what do you think would have happened? He said, Tim, you know what? First of all, you weren't in the mental state to do that, and I wasn't. I was falling apart.
Right.
I wasn't eating. I lost a lot of weight, and he says, but if you would have pushed the envelope, I'm not sure legally they really would have had grounds to charge you.
Right.
And he's a great,
No,
attorney.
I liked him a lot, and he seemed like he knew all this stuff.
So the 12 jurors would have needed to.
We're just all the witnesses on the stand.
And who would have been the witnesses against me? Tommy.
Right.
Tommy cooperated, but I'm not sure he would have made a great, witness for the government based on the fact that he was in front of the grand jury and they charged him with perjury. Really it was a trap, but that wouldn't have looked good if he was going to testify against me. So I'm not really sure if, they really would have had a great case. And Batista's lawyer, as much of an asshole as Batista is, Jack McMahon did a great job because he pushed the envelope. He knew the NBA didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. And he kept saying, I'm going to put every referee on the stand, and I can't wait to question Tim Donaghy.
Yeah.
And, of course that, shook me up, and because I was preparing with the government to be a witness against them and go into trial. So even after it was all over, I called him up and we had a great conversation because I thought he did a great job. And, we laughed, and, he pushed the government, as far as he could push them. And, I just think that he really scared them into giving Batista a sweetheart deal because, he got arrested stealing stereos out of the back of Best Buy. He was arrested for, illegal bookmaking. So this was like his third offense.
Right.
So even in a Netflix documentary, he's such a smart ass. He says 15 months.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Like I can do that,
right.
Easy. So
do you wish you would have had Batista's lawyer?
No. John Lara did a great job. They're two different styles. Like McMahon is a guy out in front of the press blowing his horn, like this is what I'm going to do, trying to scare everybody. John Lara is a guy that's going to, fight through filing motions and shaking everybody up that way legally. And two different styles, both seem to work. But if I had to pick one or the other, I'd pick John Lara 10 out of 10 times.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like too, like the NBA, as much as maybe they wanted to put this to rest, I feel like they needed at least one scapegoat to be like, see, he's in.
Not only that, and then when you talk about that Petrovich report where they were supposed to do, the investigation into everything, even Phil Scala, who was the, supervisory special agent, said that the whole thing was a joke. That whole investigation was a joke. And,
where they're grading themselves, basically.
Yeah. So it's, I think that if it wasn't for Phil Scala, things would have been a lot worse for me for whatever reason. I think he took a liking to me, and he was, knew what the NBA did. And if he didn't write the foreword for my book, I think, it could have been tossed aside as nothing but bullshit. But when he writes the foreword for my book and says I told the truth basically at every turn, I think that gives me a lot of credibility. And anytime I do an interview and somebody says, well, are you telling the truth? People think you're not telling the truth. I said, why would an FBI agent, 25-year supervisory special agent, write the foreword for my book and say I told the truth if I didn't?
Right.
And that's what gives the whole book a lot of credibility. And I couldn't be more grateful that, when I was leaving the courtroom that day and I knew I was going to jail, I said to him, hey, listen, I'm going to write a book. And would you write the foreword for it? And he paused a little bit and he says, let me think about it. But, yeah, I'll probably do it. And I communicated with him when I was in jail. And he said that the only way I'll write the foreword for the book is I need to read it and need to agree with everything in it. And if I do, I'll write the foreword. And there were some things in there that he asked that we change. And I was a little bit taken back, but I took them out. One thing was that he had told me that they wanted to indict 7 or 8 other referees, including David Stern. And he said that in front of Lauro and a guy by the name of Warren Flagg, who was a FBI agent who really worked on our side of the fence. And I called them both up and I said, do you remember him saying this? Because I thought maybe, it was a bad time in my life. Maybe who knows? And no, he definitely said it. I said, well, he wants me to take it out of the book. And Laura just said, hey, listen, Tim, if that's what you have to take out of the book for him to write the foreword, take it out of the book. So I took it out of the book.
Took it out of the book. No, it makes sense.
Yeah. Because I thought having him support me with the book and looking back on it, that has been definitely my ace in the hole that, without him writing the foreword.
Oh, you think that's helped like that much?
Yes. Yeah. I think no doubt about it. It helped a lot. And I was joking around with Cuban a couple of weeks ago. And
are you doing stuff with his that betting app, Underdog?
No.
Fantasy? No.
Okay. But I was just telling him, if he runs for president, becomes president, I want a pardon. And he just laughed. He said, I'm not running for president. And then I said, well, if I write another book, will you write the foreword? He said no.
So, okay. So to go back to, I guess, the the beginning of making the NBA bets. So you started sports betting on non-NBA games in 2002 with, what was it, Jack Concannon?
Yeah.
And then in 2003, you started betting on NBA games with Jack Concannon, and he would give it to the animals.
Well, I'm not sure what the dates were. It was so long ago, but I'm not sure he was giving it to the animals. I think what he was doing was he was placing the bets with a guy by the name of Pete Ruggieri, who was one of the animals. So what they were doing is they said all of a sudden, Jack wasn't winning betting NBA games. Now all of a sudden he's kicking our ass. And then they started looking at who was officiating. They knew me and him were very good friends. They knew something was going on. And it was funny because I always said to Jack, whatever you do, don't put these bets in through Pete. And he said, oh, I'm not, but he was. And Pete and them were smart enough to, piggyback on the bets and make millions and millions of dollars. There's one guy by the name of Joe Rufo, who's supposedly a professional gambler. That's one of the animals that just built a $5 million house on the beach in Avalon, New Jersey. So, just to me, this whole investigation got shut down, and there was a lot more people that, should have been involved in it and made a lot of money illegally, and it should have been confiscated. All the money that all those guys made. And, Phil Scholar will tell you the investigation got shut down, and, there was a lot of avenues that should have been gone down with people associated with organized crime, and it was just shut down from the highest level.
So, okay. So Jack, Jack was like insurance salesman, entrepreneur. You met him on, I think he was members of a neighboring golf course, but you guys did a lot of stuff together.
We knew each other, from high school. He went to a different high school, but he was a great basketball player in high school. And I knew him from the area, and he was a guy that played a lot of golf. And, I played a lot of golf. We had a couple mutual friends, and, we just ended up, having the afternoons off and the ability to play. And we would play golf, 3 or 4 days a week.
So he started putting in $500 bets. And then when they started kind of catching on was when he started moving up to $3,000 bets. And then they kind of realized.
No, he was betting, I think he was betting 1,000 for me, 1,000 for him, or maybe 2,000 and 2,000. I'm not sure,
Okay.
Like I said, but these guys were betting, hundreds of thousands of dollars per game.
Right.
On the games that he was putting in. So, and they were making millions and millions of dollars. So, a lot of them were spreading the money out all over the place.
Yeah.
And just killing it. So, I don't blame them for doing it. It was smart, but, Batista, myself, and Martino got stuck with the restitution, which was kind of, difficult. Should have been spread out with a lot of the amount of money they made, the $220,000 restitution, they could have paid for it, real easy with all the money they made, but they all kind of just disappeared and never got charged, and we got stuck with it.
Okay. And then you did that for you bet with Jack for you guys were kind of just going at 50-50. You guys bet on some NFL games and also bet on some NBA games.
Yeah, everything. We bet on everything. There was, Saturday and Sunday, during football, baseball, basketball season, we had 15, bets we were betting a day, anywhere from $500 to $2,000 a game.
And then when you started betting with Batista, Martino, you how much were you making per win or per bet?
Yeah, for every correct pick that I gave Martino, who related to Batista, I was supposed to get $2,000. Tommy was supposed to get $2,000. Batista was so strung out on drugs and, losing a lot of money betting on his own. I ended up getting, I think, around $26,000, and I don't think Tommy ended up getting anything. He never ended up paying him. So, meanwhile, he was betting 50 and 100,000 a game and blowing it all with cocaine and pills and, playing online poker and losing it all. So, he was just a moron.
So you only made what is it?
Yeah,
26. You just said 26 or 34,000.
26,000 I had to pay back to the government that Batista gave me through Tommy.
And what did Batista have to pay? You said 250,000.
No, Batista, myself, and Tommy had to pay what's considered joint and several.
Okay.
So we had to pay back the salary that I was given during the time that we placed those bets from December to, I think, March or April of that year. And I don't know what the calculation was, but it ended up being $217,000.
Okay.
So Tommy said, you said he made 26, or was it 34? Maybe somewhere I read. Tommy said he paid you like 110, and then Batista said he paid you over 200. I guess what
that was the
number?
big, elephant in the room when you were talking to the FBI agents. But, what Batista doesn't know, and I don't know if Tommy was smoking weed at that time and lost track of stuff or what, but Batista's such a moron he admits in the Netflix documentary, finally, that he paid me $2,000 per correct pick. So if you look at my schedule from the time we first met, which was, late December until the end of the regular season, I only refereed, 20 some games, and we didn't win every game. Right. So if it was $2,000 for every win, it came out to $26,000 or $28,000. He tries to say it was, 60 some games. And at first he paid me $5,000 a game. And he paid me over $200,000, which was bullshit because I didn't referee that many games. He didn't pay me $5,000 a game. He admitted in a Netflix doc that he paid me $2,000 a game. So his numbers are just skewed. And I think it was probably from all the coke and pills he was doing. He doesn't know, what the correct story is.
And so your last game that you bet was March 18th, 2007. Did you bet on any NBA games after that point?
You know what? Like I said, it's over 10 years. I don't know. Whatever I wrote in the book, I haven't read it for a while. So whatever the last regular season game was that year is probably one of the last bets.
Okay.
Have the statute of limitations ran out? Or no, I'm just curious. Like you can't, if like, even if you did, you wouldn't know the exact date, right?
I wouldn't know the exact date, but even if I did, what do you mean? Like if I bet on a game 6 months ago?
Because
if you said you admitted that, could that like further indict you?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because you did work the 2007 playoffs, correct? Against the Spurs versus Suns.
Right. No, there might have been a bet on that game. I think there probably was. On
a playoff game in 2007?
Yeah, probably. Up until the end of that year, excuse me.
No, you're good.
Is when we were betting. So whatever the end of that year was.
So you bet after March 18th?
Like I said, I don't know what the dates are. I know Batista went into rehab and it was shut down, but then supposedly Ruggieri was taken over. But I'm not sure if there was a bets on the playoff games or not, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't know do you know what I wrote in the book? At this point, it's been over 10 years.
Yeah, I know people have speculated maybe you did bet on the 2007 playoffs, but the NBA wanted you to say, the regular season of the NBA has always ended, at the earliest would be late March.
Right.
And, the latest would be middle of April. So people have already speculated like the Spurs Sun series, maybe you did bet on it or not, or maybe you did make an NBA bet after March 18th. It's just convenient because there was no playoffs, just regular season games. And maybe the liability that the NBA would have would be circumvented. If it was only
I don't know what the whole legal aspect of it would be, but Warren Flagg, who was a retired FBI agent, like I said, who worked for us, he kind of thought that there would be some type of class action lawsuit against the NBA to dig up more information, and there never was, which was kind of shocking. So it was really weird that nobody really came together and went after the NBA to try to find out, how and why they manipulate these games. But the thing is at the end of every game, it says NBA entertainment. And what Phil Scala told me that was a reason why they could do whatever they wanted to do in these NBA games, tell the referees to call whatever they wanted to call, because with that being at the bottom of it, it's like wrestling. They can do whatever they want. So it doesn't have to be something where it's, on the up and up. They can tell the referees to call whatever they want to call. They can have the outcomes the way they want the outcomes because it's considered entertainment and not true athletic competition.
That makes sense. Like the news saying that they're like, it's for entertainment purposes, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So now with like David Stern, so he was probably pulling strings when he always seems like he was pulling strings, but that's how he built the NBA almost. So,
but just real quick, not to interrupt you, David Stern was so smart
He's so smart. He built the league like
He was always one step ahead of everybody. He was one step ahead of us as a union and the referees. He was one step ahead of the FBI. You know, it was amazing how he was always able to be one step ahead of everyone. I'll give you an example with the union. When we were negotiating the contract with him, you know, we had it with the airline tickets to where we would get first class airline tickets and then we would fly coach or fly for free. And, you know, we'd send in the fake receipts and make all that money. Well, when he was pissed off at us, it was a full fare first class ticket or a full fare coach ticket if it was, you know, a certain time that you had to fly. And he took out the words full fare and we never saw that. So they started sending us tickets that were like, you know, specials, $99 specials.
right.
And it cost us all like $3 or $4 grand a month. So that was his way of sticking it to us, you know, so he was just always one step ahead of everybody.
I can see how. And do you think the Patrick Ewing or the lottery, do you think that was rigged?
You know, it's tough to say. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, because he was one of those guys that built the league around the stars, and he built the league around, you know, marketing these guys. And what better way to market the Knicks and the biggest franchise in NBA history than having, you know, Patrick Ewing be the cornerstone for that. So definitely wouldn't surprise me if some way, shape, or form it was rigged.
And then did you ever talk to David Stern when you were reffing? Would like the commissioners not calling you? They probably have someone like a couple steps removed. Because I'm just curious how they do it today with Adam Silver. It seemed like David Stern was more, he knew how to kind of work that game. Maybe someone else is doing it.
Yeah, never one-on-one with him. He would come to our meetings at the beginning of the year and speak for, you know, 20 minutes to a half hour to all of us as a group, give us the, you know, state of the game speech, what direction they're heading in and stuff like that, but never any one-on-ones with him. You know, he was always quickly in and out.
No, it makes sense.
Okay, I have some, I guess, last
Look at this. He's got like
final
he's got
questions.
15
Yeah, I could
pages
ask you
ready
for
to
a couple hours.
Make sure to get Tim's book too. He brought it over here.
Yeah, personal file. You
Check
gotta
it
read
out.
it. Check it out.
Let's get those Amazon sales up.
So this is about your current life, right?
Okay.
Obviously, I think in like the Netflix documentary, you made a thing. People think I have the Range Rover. I'm living this high life, I guess. So what is like how you earn current income now? You're not still reffing
No.
high school basketball games to make
Right.
ends meet, right?
I was lucky when I got out of jail, and not to, you know, give you a long story, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And before I went in jail, I was looking into buying a gas station with the money that I had left. And this guy, his name was Basile, who I was going to buy the gas station from, and the numbers didn't work out. And I left and I didn't buy it. And I got out of jail and I walk across the street and I go into this Panera Bread, and this guy Basile is sitting in there. And he goes, "Oh my God, Tim," he goes, "I didn't know, you know, you were on every newspaper and every TV station across the country." He goes, "I didn't know you were an NBA ref."
Yeah.
And I became friends with him, and I was going to buy a 7-Eleven with him, but he never got approved for a second 7-Eleven, and he wasn't happy with their business plan. And he says to me, "You know, Tim, I'm killing it in real estate. I think everyone's getting thrown out of their houses. It's 2009 now, and everyone's going to need to rent houses." I'm like, "Real estate? Nobody fucking is buying real estate. There's 10 houses for sale on every street." So he goes, "Well, let's go take a look at one." And I went with him, and the house was for sale for 70 grand. And I looked around and I thought, holy shit, did I fuck up my life? You know, I'm going to buy this house for 70 grand. And he goes, "If you don't buy it today, I'm buying it tomorrow." He said, "Lock the door on your way out." So I went home that night and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I said, you know what? I called him up. I said, I'll buy it. I'm in the house at that time. I'm fixing it up, painting it, doing different things. People are knocking on the door asking me if it's for rent. And it rented out within 24 hours. And I said, holy shit, he was right.
Right.
And I had about 160 grand, and I was working at a gambling treatment center, giving speeches, doing interventions, you know, just kind of, you know, bottling money any way I could. And, you know, every, you know, couple months I was buying one of these properties for 50 grand at auction. Nobody wanted them. Fixing them up, putting somebody in it, you know, collecting the rent. And, you know, all of a sudden I had 11 properties, and, you know, life was great. And all those houses that I bought for, you know, 50 and 60 grand are worth 350 today. So by him kind of taking me under his wing a little bit, saved my life. And I had the sales from the book and then the lawsuit from the lady. I just, every dime I got, I bought a property, and I couldn't be more fortunate now that, I'm sitting back collecting rents every month, hoping that there's, somebody's toilet isn't backed up.
Right.
So you'd say real estate investments, your book, Netflix documentary, speaking promotions.
Real estate one's probably the easiest, or the book royalty is probably the easiest. You don't have to look at it, right?
What about NBA pension? You still get an NBA pension?
No, that was the other thing. When I wanted to invest in the real estate, I took my 401k. Anything I had, anywhere I could get money, I was taking money. And I went to take my pension. My wife got 2/3 of it in the divorce. So I had a couple $100,000 in it, but I was going to take it, get taxed on it, and put it in real estate. I wanted as many properties as I could get because it was working.
Right.
It was a home run. And when I went to take it, that's when the restitution kicked in. And they said, if you go to take that, we're confiscating it for the restitution. I was like, fuck, you're going to take my pension and these other two guys are going to get, let off. So then I had attorneys negotiate with them, take the liens off their property. Martino paid me back every dime that he owed, and Batista stiffed me. But the reason I wanted to, do that was because I wanted to continue to buy the real estate. So I just let them take my pension for the restitution. So, they basically left me alone at that point.
And they couldn't go after your pension, right? If like in Florida, isn't that a law?
They couldn't go after my pension unless I took it.
Unless he took it.
If I left it there, so I could have left it there for 20 years and,
right, but
taken it with no problems. But, Lauro said the last thing you want is the government tracking you for the next 20 years. He said, Tim, just let them take it and be done with it. And it was hard.
Right.
It was really hard to let them do that. But I think it was the best for me at the time.
Right. That makes sense.
And then I guess one of the final questions, I guess, is did you make any money off the Netflix documentary? And I guess when you go out, social life, a restaurant, do people recognize you? Do people, you like playing? People want to play golf with Tim Donaghy.
Everyone asks me if Netflix pay me. They don't pay you per se for doing it. What they say, what they do is, give us a picture. And they'll give you $10,000 for the picture that they don't even use. So there's just ways that they have to pay you, but they can't say we paid him to be the subject.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like a weird way of masquerading that they're paying you, which is what they're doing.
Give me your wedding photo or something like that.
And then they don't even use it.
Right.
So, when I do go out, I am recognized a lot, and never once has anybody been mean. Everyone just is like, hey, everybody makes mistakes, and, yours just happened to be, something that everybody, was able to see, on the news. And, give you an example. Guy says, I'm an alcoholic. Many times I drove drunk. I could have killed a family and their kids, and it would have been a lot worse, but I didn't get caught, and I didn't do that, and I'm lucky. He says, you got caught. So, it's just something I think I learned a lot from, and I think it's definitely made me a better person. And, I'm fortunate that I met Basile at the time. I rebuilt my life, and, I'm doing well financially.
What's your current golf handicap?
I haven't really played golf, but if I did, I'm sure it wouldn't be too good.
In your heyday, what was it?
I think the lowest I got down was a 7 or 8.
So you're pretty good, yeah.
I was good because I played 6 days a week. So if you couldn't get good, playing that many days a week, then
get off the court.
Yeah, you shouldn't be playing. It was funny though. A guy came over my house, and I had a driver that I bought with the Ping set of golf clubs, and the guy picked it up and he goes, "Man, looks brand new. This looks like an antique. When did you get this?" And I never hit it. It was a brand new Ping driver at the time. So I actually just gave it to him.
There's been a lot of speculation or a lot of curiosity. I know you visited Atlantic City a lot, and so you kind of are familiar with the Philly area. And I guess you were in, the casinos in Atlantic City a lot. So you kind of went with the high rollers. I know Jack Concannon's group always like to do that sort of thing. And obviously you ref the NBA. Not that you have any inside knowledge, but do you think there's anything to like Michael Jordan, so like taking his 18-month hiatus from the NBA, and then also obviously his dad was kind of like mysteriously murdered, even though that's proven to be
Right.
no foul player, or so they say. I guess what do you think of that? Do you think Michael Jordan had a gambling problem? Do you think he was
no doubt he had a gambling
banned
problem
from the NBA?
Yeah,
Or-
I do, because I think when there's one story where he was playing golf with somebody and he lost $200,000 that day on the golf course, and he told the guy that he was going to score 40 points and they were going to win by 10 that night, and the guy bet a couple $100,000 on the amount of points Jordan was going to score and that they were going to win the game, and he won the game. I don't know if that alleviated him of the $200,000 he lost that day or what, but there's no doubt that with his competitive nature, he off the floor, he loved to gamble, and it gets you a buzz going that a lot of people enjoy. So I definitely think he had some issues with gambling, and I think even to this day, from what I understand, he still does.
Yeah. Do you think that like NBA like banned him for a year because of that, or
it's tough to say because he was the cash cow for the NBA at the time, and
Right.
David Stern, knew that he was the guy that the whole league was marketed around. So, is it possible? I definitely think it's possible, but it's tough to say. For David Stern, it'd be a tough decision. Am I cash cow, or is this going to leak out? So, who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
But I will tell you that David Stern's very good at burying stories and controlling the narrative when he wants to through the press. So,
For sure.
Or maybe David Stern couldn't or had to suspend him, but do you think like the mob or the gamblers have come to the NBA, and that's why like they forced David Stern's hand?
Or his dad, or
yeah, who knows?
Who
I
knows?
think that, anything is possible. So it's tough to say unless you're really on the inside. And like I said, David Stern is very good at controlling the narrative and keeping things under wraps. So I guess he would really be the only one that would really know, the two of them.
I guess my one question is, okay, so like in the 90s, did you ever, I guess, bet on NBA games in the 1990s?
In the 1990s, no.
Okay. So now I just want to do a single word lightning round, and this is the end.
Okay.
I promise. So I guess a single word to describe somebody. Michael Jordan,
GOAT.
David Stern,
Arrogant.
LeBron James.
Awesome.
You can do 2 words or 3 words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark Cuban,
Brilliant.
Robert Sarver,
Jackass.
Tommy Martino,
Funny.
Jack Concannon.
Likable.
Do you still see Jack? Or,
I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
No. It was funny. Quick story. I went to the Eagles Tampa game in Tampa. Okay. And I'm, there, and my other buddies there. I go over to see him, and Jack and Cannon sitting with him. It was the first time I saw him since
really?
the whole thing went down. But we just shook hands, and he was a nice guy.
John Laurel,
Brilliant.
and then Andy Reid.
I don't know. Seems lazy to me for some reason, especially as a parent with his 2 kids and everything that they did in Philadelphia and Kansas City. And I remember reading some article, the judge said he was lazy as a parent, and he just looks lazy to me. But he seems to be, a terrific coach.
I was in on a good one. Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts, true professional. A guy like that, it just seems like everything was against him, and he just kept plugging until, everybody realized that, he's the real deal.
For sure.
AJ Brown.
Muscular, man. I tell you what, you look at him and he's just so strong. And,
Yeah.
It's like, I remember that pass he caught for the touchdown where 3 guys just fell, and he just looked at them and pointed at them.
Yeah.
I forget who they were playing, but he just seems so strong.
Yeah, he's a beast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's it. Yeah. Thanks again. Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah.
Thanks again.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Fun times. Good luck to the Eagles. So
Yeah,
I think they'll get it done.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
they just got that. I remember when the Vikings played the Eagles 4 years ago in the NFC Championship, 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a bloodbath.
They blew them out.
We got the first touchdown, and then Casey came through the pick. Anyways, but it just feels like that year.
That wasn't the Super Bowl though, Seven.
I know, but it just feels like that year for the Eagles were just powerful, and
Right.
they're gonna
Right,
do,
They got
it done.
Sue and Jordan Davis.
Yeah, and they're just like gonna do it. So.
I can't stop, I'm on the way to the top. Got another flight to hop. I can't stop, got a new whip and a lot. Got a new crib, I'm a cop. I won't stop, got a whole family and friends. Everybody needs